I wanted the show, above all, to tell people that art is not an easy thing to do. There is a natural myth about the artist. I had it myself when I was a kid, that you sit in your room, whether you're a composer or a painter or a writer, and wait for the muse to come. And I've heard people say, oh, so-and-so is so talented, as if all they had to do was get up in the morning and the painting was made or the song was written. And they don't understand that it's exactly as much hard work, and maybe harder than making a shoe or anything that you make out of nothing.
A blank page or canvas. Challenge. Bring order to the whole through design. Composition. Balance. Light. And harmony. Art isn't easy.
Hey, it's a brains.
Even when you're smart. Little technical screw up tonight, Dennis. You think it's all together, and something falls apart.
George, it was terrific.
Thanks. That means a lot to me. We saw you talking to Redmond from Texas. Yeah.
Did you get one of the commissions?
We talked about it, you guys. My stuff's a little
Stephen Sondheim's musical, Sunday in the Park with George, has just opened at the Royal National Theatre in London. It's an exploration of the pleasures and pitfalls of the creative process, and it's been seen as Sondheim's most personal work to date.
Art isn't easy. Overnight you're a trend, you're the right combination, and the trend's at an end. Suddenly last year's sensation. So you should support.
Its philosophical starting point is a 19th century painter, Georges Seurat, and his masterpiece, A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte. Seurat's pointillist technique put on colours in dots, which confused many contemporary critics. Sondheim's musical has similarly sent critical minds into battle.
So that your work can go on exhibition.
There's the man of the hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I welcome you to the inaugural meeting of the course on musical theatre to be given in association with the Cameron Mackintosh Chair of Contemporary Theatre. It's a particular delight that Stephen Sondheim has agreed to be the first holder of the chair. I think his command of both words and music are, in the context of musical theatre, are undoubted. But during this week in Oxford, we've also learned another quality, that of absolute dedication. We can't get him away from the music room where he's teaching his courses, somewhat to the dismay, if I may say so, of the media.
That's something to perform. Because one of the things you will discover, I hope, is that as your material goes to actors and actresses, you suddenly find yourself in the embarrassing position of having to defend what you've written. Because an actor will come to you and say, oh, now, what did you mean by this line? And you can't say, oh, well, when I mean, it's a, it's, you know. You've got to tell them exactly what it means. You must be able to defend every single word and note. So everything must be a conscious decision, just like Seurat's dots. Every single dot in that picture was a conscious decision to make it green and not blue. You must, and if he were here right now, and you say, why did you choose a violet outline for the girl there? He'd say, because. And he would tell you what he was doing. And you must be able to do that too, and you should do that musically too. Because, you know, if I were a singing actor or actress, I would say to you, why is my inflection going up in the musical line there? Shouldn't it be going down? You better have an answer for that.
As part of his professorship at Oxford, Sondheim holds a series of seminars for 13 specially chosen lyricists and composers. As well as receiving tuition on their own work, the students will be given a unique chance to see how Sunday in the Park comes together at the National.
Right down to the level of...
I became a teacher at Oxford this year because Cameron McIntosh founded a visiting professorship of theater up there. It's not just of musical theater, it's of theater, and only the first person to do it, which is me. I'm a musical theater man. And I love teaching, and I've always thought that all art is a form of teaching. I think painting is a form of teaching. It's any kind of communication is a form of teaching. And an artist, a visual artist, shows us ways of looking at the world, and a novelist shows us ways that people behave. A composer teaches us ways to listen. And so it was natural. I've always enjoyed teaching.
At the National Theatre, Sondheim tutors the cast in a complex and challenging work. Philip Quast plays Georges Seurat and Maria Friedman, his mistress Dot. Their relationship on stage is set against Seurat's commitment to painting, inevitably at the expense of the relationship.
I've nothing to say.
You have many things
Well, nothing that's not been said.
said by you.
I do not know where to go.
And nor did I.
I want to make things that count, things that will be
I
new.
did what I had to do.
What am I to do?
Sorry, I can't work.
Just wait one minute, I did what I had to do.
The musical began with Sondheim's determination to work with a new collaborator, the off-Broadway playwright and director, James Lapine.
James Lapine and I were looking for a show to do, and one evening we were talking, and the subject of that painting came up. I observed that it always had looked like a stage set to me, and he said, "Did you ever notice that nobody in the painting is looking at anybody else?" And he said, "I wonder why." And we started to speculate, and we saw all the farcical implications of such an observation, that people might be hiding from each other, husbands from wives, because the Grand Jet was sort of a lower middle class, working class, really, a playground. And he said, of course, the main character is missing. And I said, who? And he said, the painter. And once he said that, it sort of clicked into place, and we started to speculate on not only the relationships of all the people in the picture, but the relationship of the artist to the world that he was creating. And it's about a man in control of his landscape.
It's hard to say specifically how a show evolves, but I know that as much as we talked about and explored the creative process, it wasn't necessarily, at least in my mind, what the show was specifically about. It seemed to me to be about someone who was impassioned about what he did and what he had to go through to do it. And this happened to be an artist, which is obviously something that we both knew about.
Seurat, as we studied his life, because not much is known about his life, as a matter of fact, he turned out to be a perfect subject for a play, because he didn't have any of the obvious or well-known characteristics. Say, if you did a play on Van Gogh, you'd have to have a man cutting off his ear. So there's nothing that the audience expects.
Act 1 is set in the 19th century, with Seurat beginning to sketch in the characters who appear in the painting. As Seurat the painter arranges his world, Seurat the lover is discussed by Dot.
Well, there are worse things than sweating by a river on a Sunday. There are worse things than staring at the river as you're posing for a picture being painted by your lover in the middle of the summer on an island in the river on a Sunday.
In Act 2, the musical moves on 100 years, and this allows Sondheim to comment on modern art and the modern art world. All of it, though, springing from Seurat's painting.
In order to study the painting, James and I went to the Chicago Art Museum, which is where the painting hangs. And because in the other gallery, it was things like that. That kind of overheard conversation is very useful for an ambience.
We then also discovered that experts often disagree. There's an object in that painting that's very curious. You only see part of it. It's up in the upper right-hand section. It could be anything from a pastry cart to an incinerator to a place for garbage. It's not very clear what it is. And there were 3 curators there who were taking us through the gallery and showing us the painting. And we asked them what it was, and each one thought it was something different. They had no idea. They had different thoughts on it. And it was that kind of mystery about it.
More blue, more beer, more light, color and light. There's only color and light. Yellow and white, just blue and yellow and white. Look at the air, miss. See what I mean. Know the color there, miss. That's done with green. Conjoined with orange.
There's a very smooth transition between a lot of the dialogue and recitative and song. Especially in the middle of songs, you'll get snatches of dialogue as well. Now, is there any conscious decision to impart some information in songs, some information spoken?
Entirely conscious. I think people do not think carefully enough about what to sing and what not to sing. There's a tendency either to sing everything or merely to sing songs and speak. And I think there are certain shows that call for one technique or another, but the choice of what to sing and what not to sing is, first of all, it's delicate, it's difficult, but there are choices that must be made consciously.
Basically, where dialogue held up, it remained, and where the emotional life of the characters could have been expanded, it often went towards song.
Because you care about nothing.
I care about many things.
Things. Not people.
People, too. I cannot divide up my feelings as neatly as you, and I am not hiding behind my canvas. I am living in it.
What you care for is yourself.
I care about this painting. You will be in this
I am
painting.
something you can use.
I have thought you
Because
understood.
I understand that I left.
There is nothing I can say, is there?
Yes, George, there is. You could tell me not to go. Say it to me. Tell me not to go. Tell me that you're hurt. Tell me you're relieved. Tell me that you're bored. Anything, but don't assume I know. Tell me what you feel.
I wanted all the love songs, so to speak, between George and Dot to be incomplete until the final scene, so that the love theme, their romantic theme, so to speak, starts in her little reverie in the middle of Sunday in the Park with George, where she is dancing around him and then stroking his hair and that sort of thing. It is then developed in color and light, but he is more interested in his painting.
Color and light.
But the way he looks, he could look
There's
forever.
only color and light.
But if he sees you and doesn't all at once,
Purple and white.
what does he think when he looks like that?
And blue and purple and
What
white.
does he see?
Look at this slate, girls. Your cool blue spot.
Dark and shiny.
No stay in the shade, girls. It's getting hot. It's getting orange.
But it's warm inside his eyes.
Hotter.
And it's soft inside his eyes.
The point in the duet in the first act where he says, I could look at her forever, and she says, I could look at him forever. She's speaking entirely emotionally, although she also has another line in which she says, but most of all, I love your painting. So she has mixed feelings. She loves him, but she also loves his work. I think he has mixed feelings. He loves her, but he loves the way she looks, and she's a great subject to paint. And so I think both lines have a double-edged meaning.
And you look inside the eyes.
Pink lips, the red cheeks.
Here and there.
Wide eyes, sunny
Then we go to We Do Not Belong Together, which is her, in a sense, the carry-on of that moment at the end of Color and Light. And again, it neither reaches a cadence nor a rhyme at the end because it's still an unfinished affair.
I am what I do, which you knew, which you always knew, which I thought you were a part of.
No, you are complete, Stuart. You are your own. We do not belong together. You are complete, George. You all alone. I am unfinished. I am diminished. With or without you.
The emotional relationship of George and Dot throughout the show is one that is never resolved till 100 years later. It's a 100-year love affair. And it has to do with the crossing of art and emotion. And obviously, the 100 years later, George doesn't fall in love with the actual fleshly Dot, but he falls in love with Surratt's idea of Dot, which is compounded of emotion and the artist's objectivity.
Look at what you've done.
Something in the light, something in the sky, and the grass, up behind the trees.
Look at all the things you gave to me.
Things I hadn't looked
Let me
at
give
till
to
now.
you
Flower
something
on
in
your
return.
hat and your smile.
I would be so pleased.
And the way you catch the light, and the care, and the feeling, and the
Together, we will always belong
together.
But I find an enormously emotional moment when they both sing, "We have always belonged together," and it wouldn't work if I hadn't set it all up 1 hour earlier or 100 years earlier. So it's always very useful to feel where you're going to. That doesn't necessarily mean a punchline, although that often helps, but to know what is the emotional progression and to be sure that you're setting things up. Otherwise, you can often paint yourself into a corner or say, or worse, how do I get there from here? Because you haven't done your homework and thought, if I set this up here, then that can pay off there, and that can pay off over there.
I did what I had to do. Stop worrying where you're going. Move on. If you can know where you're going.
The other thing, Maria, again, not only should you pronounce what, but also hold it a little longer. Don't make it quite so short. So what?
You wanted to do that?
Yeah, to rhyme with not. So what?
But we'd say not.
What? What did I say?
What?
Oh, no, I didn't say what. So what? It's a dark egg. It's a dark egg. No. Right? Not.
Look at what you want, not at where you are, not at what you'll be. Look at all the things you've done for me. Opened up my eyes, taught me how to see. Notice every tree,
Notice every tree,
understand the light,
understand the light.
concentrate
I
on
want to
love.
move on. I want to explore the light. I want to know how to get through to something new, something of my own. Move on. Move on.
Right, stand by. Now, again, just be very free about it. So, lots of chit-chat and whatever. Thank you.
Come on!
At the National, the director is Stephen Pimlott, who comes from a background in opera production. On Broadway, the directing role was filled by Sondheim's collaborator, James Lapine. While Lapine could develop his own script, Pimlott has to work with a text already complete.
And I do quite like him when he has this terrible swiftness.
I see.
It's rather good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's got some dark purpose, which, I mean, doesn't do anything, but that he's sort of either kind of, like he's got that potency in the picture, he's still, or he doesn't half go for it.
Right.
Particularly in these moments when it's all concerted so that we see the different styles. The odd thing about being a director is, in a sense, you don't do anything. The set designer, or the designer in this case, designs the sets and costumes. The lighting designer does the lights. The actors get out there and sing. Stephen Sondheim writes the music. The conductor waves his arms. A director actually doesn't do a thing. All he does is kind of suggest to various people what they might do.
Bit by bit, putting it together. Piece by piece, only way to make the work apart. Every moment makes a contribution. Every little detail plays a part. Having just evasion's no solution. Everything depends on execution. Putting it together, that's what counts.
The work of designer Tom Cairns gives Sondheim a unique laboratory in which to discuss his ideas with the students.
I wanted to show them not only that how a show grows technically, but also that what differentiates the theater from all other media these days, like television, movies, novels, is that it is constantly open for reinterpretation.
Together, bit by bit. George! Leave it here in the bathroom for a stop time.
I don't really have a vision as such. I don't think, oh, I see it like this. Gosh, if we set it in, you know, during the Roman Empire, or I can see it all in black and white, or... It doesn't really happen like that. For me, the thing only starts to take on a vision when I begin to work with the designer. In this case, we sort of went really for the inner mind of the painter. In a sense, everything that happens on the stage, it has an external reality. They're real people with real relationships, but also they're all created by George. They are all aspects of his personality. It's possible to see every character as an expression of his own personality, and we decided to go outwards and express that in the set. The problems in the piece is how you translate 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions. The picture itself is a 2-dimensional thing. Theatre's a 3-dimensional thing. So the first image that the audience get is this. A man alone in an empty white space with all the fear attached to that. Also, I think it's a piece which demands that you be aware of the internal and external realities of it. And the idea that we wanted to play with is that even at the very beginning, it's not a completely white page. These would be very ordered, these pictures against the wall. It's not a completely white page because the ideas are there.
Balance. Right. And harmony. I want you to look out at the water.
Obviously, the first few moments of a play, the first quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, you're very much establishing the language. And I'm a great believer, in a way, of presenting audiences with problems in the first few minutes, because if you can actually present them things which are difficult and challenging and puzzling and odd, and win them over, then actually, of course, they will enter into the spirit of the play. And it seems to me this piece is very much a play in a sense of you need to be playful with it.
Most workshops, I think I said this the other day, most workshops are elaborate audition pieces. The reason we actually workshop this with sets was that we realized that we could not tell whether the show would work or not without actually making a painting on the stage. You just can't tell with props and chairs and suggestions. Almost any other show I've ever done should work without scenery. I mean, I think any show should work without scenery. Scenery should be extra value. But the test of a show is to be able to do it in a room like this, with a group of chairs and tables and an audience with an imagination.
The set is rather an extraordinary feature of the show. As in any play, you know, there has to be an environment. But in a sense, the set is almost the total expression of what happens. It does have a kind of personality. And there is always the danger with something like that, oh, it can take over. No musical should ever be about a set. It's a criticism sometimes levelled at the big mega, you know, Euro musical that we have at the moment. I don't think it's ever true that a good musical can be about spectacle. The spectacle should support it, and in this case, it is clearly a very integral part of it. Just sort of vaguely introduce you, ladies and gentlemen. These are the students who are working with Stephen Sondheim on his course at Oxford. I've explained that we're in very, very early stages of rehearsal. What you'll be seeing now is some music calls. I'll disappear, and then we'll come back and do a bit of staging. So I'll leave you to it for a moment. All right, please take a seat. Okay? I'll see you in a...
Right. Let's go from actually a little bit before that. Straight in on Betty and Alex. A little bit under...
A little bit. Yeah, just if I lead it into them, he's given here as that politician. Yeah. And what? Here a little bit.
To what? Bullshit. Anyway, the painting's overrated.
Overrated, it's a masterpiece.
A masterpiece is horribly important, maybe. All it is journey inside George Floyd. Yours is a resonance, a relevance.
Okay, can we just try... There's a man grinning sadistically over there. Can we just try it under tempo so we can actually have a bash at those? Let's add Greenberg, please.
Musicalizing art is a hard thing to do, and visual arts, well, I guess, hard to do if you were trying to musicalize a writer's thoughts. But I do use stream of consciousness in one of the songs, and because I think that's what happens when an artist is creating.
Promotion of the man is the stain of the arts.
Good.
I have a very schematic mind, and it happens that Seurat used a square or an oblong palette in which he had only 11 colors and white. And the colors were in the order of the rainbow, the color wheel, so to speak. That's red was next to red-orange, which was next to orange. And he would never allow himself to mix any color that was not immediately adjacent to another one, so the colors remained pure. And he would never mix red with blue, for example. And he would ameliorate each color with white. And I thought, well, it's an interesting coincidence, because there are 12 notes in the scale. There are 12 notes in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And back to 1. And I thought maybe I should use, I should assign, in a sense, a color to each note. And white might be the tonic note. That's, say, the note on which the scale is based. Well, if I had done that and applied notes next to each other like colors, it would all have come out with chords of like that. Which I happen to like chord clusters of, you know, lots of notes together. But when you just put what they call minor seconds together, it comes out fairly dissonant. And it's good for spice, but not good for I think, basic building blocks. So I decided to abandon that. And, but I did make use of it in that painting theme of... The major feature of that theme is the juxtaposition of these notes and this. And the entire first act is the working out of these notes into a harmony using the word literally as he does in the play. In other words, a resolution. The climactic notes of the act are the most dissonant notes in it, just before the painting is made. And they go... It's all those notes together, and then they resolve.
Harmony!
Act 2 is concerned with the present day. Seurat's painting now hangs on the walls of a museum. It possesses a life and voice of its own.
It's hot up here.
It's hot and it's monotonous.
I want my glasses. This is not my GoPro
I hate this dress. It's hot up here. The soldiers of the pound. It's hot and it's monotonous.
My glasses, I want my glasses. And further of all, finding your fading is very degrading. And God, I am so hot. Well, there are worse things than sitting by a river on a Sunday. There are worse things than sitting by a river.
When you're swimming in a picture that was painted by a genius.
And you know that you're a mortal.
And you'll always be remembered.
Even if they never see you.
And you're listening to dribble.
And you're part of your companion. And your glasses have been stolen.
You're falling beyond endurance.
And the baby has no nappies.
And you're slutty, I am not.
And you are out of all proportion.
And I hate to be free.
He never gets a breeze up here. And she's up here. Forever you cannot run a monk up here. You're stuck up here in this gavotte. Perspectives don't make sense up here. It's tense up here. Forever the outward show of bliss up here is disappearing dot by dot. And it's
One of the problems with the second act, of writing the second act of George, was that we wanted the 20th century George to be an equivalent to Seurat of 100 years earlier. That is to say, on the cutting edge of whatever art he's in. So what is on now at the National Theatre is, in fact, a mixed media performance art piece that we hope will feel as if it is something that would startle the museum goers.
seated, woman.
For the New York production, Sondheim and Lapine considered performance art too risky to give the modern-day George the necessary credibility as a serious artist. Instead, they opted for a laser show. Sondheim, like George himself, wants to be at the cutting edge of his art, but some audiences believe this approach can make his work too uncompromising.
When people talk about compromising to please an audience or to reach an audience, I don't think it's about compromise. I think it is about reaching an audience. The audience is the final collaborator. There's no point, particularly in the theater, in trying to write something that doesn't communicate itself to an audience. But I would never write down to them. I think it's insulting to an audience to say, well, you won't understand this, so I'll make it easier for you. I think intelligibility is very important, and by intelligibility, I'm not just talking about audibility, I'm talking about intelligibility of ideas. And in fact, whenever I teach songwriting in a workshop situation, or as I'm doing up at Oxford now, I always say that intelligibility is the most important thing in the theater.
Oh,
What's the matter?
I hate this tree.
I thought you were drawing me.
I am. Just stand still.
It's not a realistic evening. When he erases a tree and it goes up, and that's the single most important moment, incidentally, to let the audience know what the evening is about. And that's something, again, as we discuss your work, I'm going to constantly bring up, which is how do you let the audience know what the ground rules are of your show right at the beginning? And it became very important for the audience to know that George controlled the landscape.
Yes? No!
She's everywhere.
No! What is it, Madame? Tree. The tree. Where is our tree? What tree? The tree where you always sit near.
When the old lady comes on and says, "Where's my tree?" and the audience laughs, it's because they recognize that the evening is going to be not about realistic stuff. I mean, it doesn't make any sense if somebody removes a tree and she says, "Where's my tree?" But knowing that they are in on the joke lets the audience know and prepares it for all these other things that happen. You have to consider your audience without pandering to them. This is not about pandering. It is about the fact that the theater experience is a relationship between the author through the people on stage and the audience. It is a colloquy. It's not a one-way passage. And you have to consider your audience at all times. And that does not mean that you give them foot-tapping numbers if you don't want to do that. It's about recognizing their sensibilities.
They have never understood, and no reason that they should. But if anybody could.
In Finishing the Hat, Stephen Sondheim writes of the thrill of creating art where nothing existed before.
How you have to finish the hat. How you watch the rest of the world from our window while you finish the hat. Mapping out a sky. What you feel like planning a sky. What you feel when voices that come through the window go. Until they distance and die, until there's nothing but sky, and how you're always turning back too late from the grass or the stick or the dark or the light, how the kind of woman willing to wait, not the kind that you want to find waiting to return you to the night, dizzy from the height, coming from the height. Studying the hat, entering the world of the hat, reaching through the world of the hat like a window, back to this one from that, studying a face, stepping back to look at a face, leaves a little space in the way like a window, but to see. It's the only way to see. And when the woman that you wanted goes, you can say to yourself, well, I give what I give. But the woman who won't wait for you knows that however you live, there's a part of you always standing by, mapping out the sky.
The song seems almost planned to promote a round of applause from the audience. Or, as it's known in the business, finding a button.
Finishing a hat. Look, I made a hat. Where there never was a hat.
I don't know if you use the word in this country or not. That's called finding a button on a number. It's a way of, it's buttoning the number up and urging and cueing the audience to applaud and make that connection with the live people on stage where they say, we like you, you like us, and it allows the show then to go. After a big hand, you'll find the concentration on the next scene is always intense. Or if it's a comic line, what is a mildly comic line will bring the house down if there's been a big hand before. Just a hello, and everybody screams and laughs simply because they all feel good. There's a rush of energy from having released the other energy.
I do believe in that this piece particularly has to flow. It's very important. That's why we have no blackouts. And even when we play the numbers, wherever possible, we've, with Stephen's permission, cut the button.
We have a lot of trouble with the button on one of the numbers here, which is the button to Everybody Loves Louie. I'm hoping that we might find a better button here in England. It's a number, it always got a nice hand, but it should have gotten a better than nice hand. And there's something wrong with the button, and I don't know whether it's musical or whether it's a bit of business on the stage. I don't know yet.
Everybody loves Louie. Louie's simple and kind. Everybody loves Louie. Louie's lovable. Louie! Seems we never know, do we? Who we're going to find. And Louie the baker is not what I had in mind.
we'll only discover what the problems of this business of not kind of going for applause at the end of numbers will be during the week of the previews. It may be that we will find that the evening is too dead and needs more excitement, in which case we may feel that we will need to restore that. On the other hand, he doesn't write a button if he can't find one.
Bluey has to make his way. George can only make his. Oh, fantastic. Bluey is.
That show's about all of you, in case you didn't recognize it. And I thought it was wonderfully appropriate that of all the shows that should be on, that should be in connection with this set of seminars, that it should be that one, because it's about the creative act, and that's what this seminar is about.
Art isn't easy. Every minor detail is a major decision. Have to keep things in scale. Have to hold to your vision.
The phrase art isn't easy in the second act is used by the 20th century George to tell how difficult it is to raise money for the machines that he makes. And it has a double meaning.
Art isn't easy. Trying to make connections. Who understands it? To evaluate. Art isn't easy. Trying to form collections. Always in transit.
Then you have to collaborate.
Art isn't easy. Any way you look at it.
What Sunday does is present the artist's world from the artist's point of view. And so when I'm saying that it illustrates that art isn't easy, it illustrates what goes on in an artist's mind, or attempts to do that anyway.
Shot by shot, keeping at a distance doesn't pay. Do you remember your objective? Not throw your privacy away.
All the business in the second act about not giving away your privacy and keeping at a distance doesn't pay has to do with the businessman artist.
A little bit of hype can be effective, once you keep it in perspective and throw it out some recognition. It's going to give you our commission, which was a crack in the foundation. You'll wait it all in conversation.
People who think that that passage refers to me are partly right in that when I put on shows, I have to audition the material to get money, to get actors and actresses. Everybody has to. And it's part of the business of putting on a show. You accept it. If you don't accept it, then you don't write shows.
Link by link, making the connections. Drink by drink, fixing and protecting the design. Adding just a dab of politician, always knowing where to draw the line. And get the fun in addition, signing up a prominent commission. Otherwise your perfect composition isn't going to get much exhibition.
I remember outlining a song called Posterity, because I'm fascinated by, you know, did Surratt think his work was going to live, or did he not? Does any artist think his work is going to live? Does it matter whether you think your work is going to live after you or not?
In the year that this was first performed, the show that won all the Tonys was La Cage aux Folles. I would say, presumptuous of me, but this piece, I think, might be more likely to be around in 100 years' time.
I don't understand people worrying about whether their art will outlast them. You're not around to enjoy it, and you can't tell. Time is indeed the leveler of art. Good art rises, bad art drops. Great art rises permanently and gives pleasure to generations to come. And quite often, it's not, particularly in the popular arts, it's not the art of its day. That is to say, Beethoven was nowhere near as popular as Spohr, but very few people play Spohr anymore. And a lot of people play Beethoven and listen to Beethoven and get great pleasure out of it. I think the thing is to communicate to your audience right now and hope that they will enjoy it, and then perhaps that other generations will enjoy it. You can't worry about it, because there's no way to predict, any more than you can worry about whether it's going to be a hit or not. You just can't.
Stephen Sondheim began as a pupil of the great lyricist Oscar Hammerstein. 45 years on, this student passes that learning to a new generation.
I'm more interested in style than Oscar was, but I believe that when you write a song, it's what you say that counts. And what Oscar taught me essentially was to pay attention to what's being said and not to sacrifice sense for cleverness.
I think if you can actually stand up and play your music and sing it and sell it in front of Stephen Sondheim, I think there's probably very few other people who wouldn't actually have the courage to do it. It's a big thing to be able to do to sell yourself.
I think one of the most important things that I've learnt from the course is from Stephen the primacy of the show itself, and that no matter how clever an idea is, a musical idea or a script idea, if it doesn't work, the show comes first, so you ditch it no matter how much work you put in and whatever, so it's all part of making up a large jigsaw.
I think being true to your own individual voice and your own individual style as a writer, and that includes listening, hearing and communicating. And communication has been a key element that Sondheim has stressed to all of us.
We've learned that it's going to be bloody hard work.
I know how hard it is to write a song, and I thought it would be good for an audience to know that art is not easy that way.
And dark, enter a sound. Bum 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 bum.